that this is the third event in our leadership series here for both Hamilton, West-Ancaster, Dundas, with a collaboration for the other Hamilton ridings and the Niagara region. So thank you all for coming tonight. This is the third episode, event, sorry, episode. But I hope you continue to tune in and see it through to the end. I know we have them going all the way to September, and the vote's going to be October 4th. So don't forget the most important part. This is the lovely Judy Green. I had Judy on my podcast, for those of you that don't know. It was a really great episode. She's a fantastic candidate, lovely woman, and I'm really happy that she could make some time for us here tonight and come out and let us chat and hear more about her and ask lots of questions. So
awesome.
Over to you, Judy.
Well, thank you so much, Victoria, and everyone for having me there. I love that you guys organize regionally. As I mentioned, I'm here in Clementsport, Nova Scotia, which is a population of 300. And this is in Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. And I'm very blessed to live close to Elsiphook, which is Bear River First Nations, where I've had the privilege of working in the health center, helping coach and teach people nutrition, and have met a great number of friends and many friends within that community who are very patient with me as I learn how to be the best ally I can be. And I always say that, Nova Scotia and Mi'kma'ki is under the Peace and Friendship Treaties, which means that everybody who lives here are treaty people. And it's important that we understand our rights and our responsibilities. So as Victoria knows, because she's interviewed me before, and I'm so waiting to be able to do a do-over Victoria. I looked back at that early interview and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do an outtakes. You know how sometimes you'll have an actress who will be critiquing her own performance in a film like many years down in her experience. That's how I feel like I need to be doing with that earlier interview. It was lots of ums and ahs. I would hope that I have improved somewhat since then. But for those of you who don't know me, I've lived in 5 provinces across Canada. I was born in Princeton, BC, grew up in BC, the Okanagan, as well as Winnipeg. I am a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces. I was one of the first airframe technicians, female, in that trade in the early 80s. My husband spent his full career in the military. Both my parents were military. Our son is still military, although he's waiting on his release right now and will be moving to New Brunswick. So my youngest grandbaby will be closer to us, which I'm very excited about. And I have 2 older granddaughters who live just a little outside of Halifax, so just a couple of hours away. And I'm looking forward to them joining me for their annual Week with Grammy in the summertime coming up in September. So it is quite an interesting experience from all across Canada, all those interactions with people and understanding both urban and rural. I also have an undergrad in computer science from Acadia University and a master's from Carleton University in Ottawa, where I worked in high tech for about 10 years. Then I went on to have a software consulting firm in the oil fields of Alberta, and then went on to have 3 other businesses. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years now, and it's been an interesting ride and learned a lot of things. And lo and behold, the skills that you need to be a good entrepreneur are also the skills you need in politics. So it's an interesting toolkit in a roundabout way that I've collected the tools, but I'm just really understanding to my delight that those skills are exactly what we need in politics right now. So I'm not sure how you want to run this, if you just want to have people throw out questions, or if you have pre-submitted questions that you want to ask. I always like to have it kind of informal, as if we're all sitting around a table with our favorite beverage and just discuss issues that are important to all of us.
I'm sorry, that's my dog. I think that's a good call. Usually from candidates, we get a 5 to 10 minute introduction, and then we just open it up to questions. I think it's a nice setting tonight that we don't need to type them in the chat ahead of time. The chat's not particularly active this evening. So if you have a question, I think just go ahead and ask.
That sounds great.
David has a really
Okay.
great one that he asks all the candidates, so I might put the pressure on him.
Awesome.
I know he's muted tonight though, so give him a second to type it in the chat or unmute.
Yeah, I'm on max on my sound. I hope everybody can hear me. I will try to speak louder if there's any problems. I'm on max on the headphone and the computer, so.
Perfect, sounds good to me.
Okay.
So David's normal question is, oh, now I'm gonna word it wrong, is about what qualifications do you look for in a deputy leader?
That's an excellent question, and one I haven't been asked before. And at this point in the campaign, you're doing really good to find ones that haven't been asked over and over. So first off, I want somebody who can work with me, who isn't driven by ego, somebody who is willing to be a follower when necessary and a leader when necessary. And that's an important skill, I think, in all leaders. In the military, we were taught you can't lead until you know how to follow. And I think that that is a very, very true skill. Know where your skills are needed and apply them to achieve the group goal. So needs to be somebody who isn't playing internal politics, that is honest, has a lot of integrity. I always have a very high level of ethics that I comport myself under. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the 4 Agreements by Manuel Ruiz, but those I follow quite solidly in my personal life. And the one that I had the hardest time learning how to really live by it was don't take things personally. Another one is don't make assumptions. So these are agreements that I think are really important for all of us. So it needs to be somebody who is innovative, is progressive, and really looks for solutions outside the box. I'm very much a solution-oriented person, but I would also need somebody who is fluent in French, because I am not. So I would look for somebody who could complement, because, you know, if you look at the full list of skills that we really require of a leader, it's going to be really hard to find one person who has all of those skills. So I love the idea of really using our deputy leaders in a way of fleshing out or filling in the holes, much like I find with my 38-year marriage. My husband and I complement each other quite nicely that way. He keeps me grounded and provides a sanctuary around me, because I'd be going full tilt all the time. And it's really good to have somebody who helps you have that balance in your life. So those are the sorts of things that I'd be looking for in a deputy leader. And I actually have somebody in mind. So
Always nice to hear. And David just gives his apologies for lurking. He's at a computer with no mic or webcam, but he sees and hears us all.
awesome.
So thanks for tuning in, David. I'm sorry, my dogs are working. I'm going to mute again in a second. So please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. If you also, like David, don't have a mic, please type your question in the chat. If you move your cursor to the bottom of the toolbar, it will prompt you can click on to open the chat, and then that will open on the right hand side. And then once you type it out, please just be sure to click enter, so that way we can all see your message. And then also one last note to everyone, so that way we can all see it.
Excellent.
David's asked another question here. Which of the candidates does, in your opinion, have an adequate knowledge of French?
Okay, so since I do not, I cannot make that decision on my own, but from people who have commented on that, I think that David Murner is, especially since he has been in the courtroom and been able to run court cases in French, as Dimitri can. And so those are, I think, the 2 top runners in terms of their French. Anime is quite gifted linguistically. And of course, Miriam has very, very strong French.
Fiona, I see you have your hand raised if you'd like to ask your question now.
Oh,
I'm just going to unmute you.
Okay. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Fiona.
You ran in the federal election, right?
I did.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your writing, the demographics, people?
Sure. So West Nova is kind of considered a riding that is like a subset of Canada. Because we have fisheries, we have forestry, we have industry, we have tourism, we have Acadian, we have First Nations, and of course we have English. So in many respects, people often will say how West Nova goes, the rest of the country will go. That was not the case in the last election. Because West Nova was the only riding in Nova Scotia that went Conservative. I came in third. So we beat the new Democrats, and we tripled our vote and almost had 6,000 voters vote for Green. And this is in a riding that doesn't have an active EDA. My team is the EDA now, and it's really growing, but it isn't established like we have in many ridings around Canada. So it's an interesting situation where we were able to get those inroads, even though we were running across people that didn't know there was a Green Party, certainly didn't know that there was one in West Nova. And it was an amazing learning experience for all of us. And none of us on my team really had any experience campaigning. I had 2 people who had done some canvassing on other campaigns in the past, but certainly nobody who had been a campaign manager or at any depth of experience within the electoral process. So it was very interesting. We were reading books like crazy, talking to people like crazy, relying on my marketing skills, because especially in the first pre-writ period, in my mind, it really is a marketing endeavor where you are getting the word out, you're going where people are, and making yourself known, making those connections into community groups and the underrepresented demographic in your area. And that's all things that we can be doing between elections as well. But then once the writ is down, you are door knocking and, doing your debates and all the heavy, intensive campaigning.
Well, I'd just like to say that I think you've obviously got the knack, because that's a really remarkably successful outcome in a riding with no EDA. So congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you for that. And our riding's a little unique in that half the population is at or below the poverty line. So running a listening campaign was critical, because if I dropped into people's doorsteps and started talking about climate change, they would have just like, I don't have time for this. I'm trying to make sure my kids have food, and we met the rent for the end of the month, so that's why it's really, really important that we listen to what's important to the people that we're speaking to, because not all of them are in our little echo chamber. So we have to be respectful and listen to what's most important to them.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, maybe can I follow that up just to ask you?
Sure.
Because I live in a riding where, I mean, we've just formed a Green Riding Association here. It's mostly sort of I live in a small former industrial city. The economy bottomed out sometime in the 80s, so the collapse of 2008, 2009 hardly mattered, because we were already down there. And we're not coming back up. I love the people here. I really think they're exceptional. But I know that I have to really understand where they're coming from. I mean, we do. We have quite a lot of poverty here. I think we've more got a situation where people are just making it. And I really, really encourage the party to have a deep understanding of this. It's when I see so much focus on minute aspects of very far left policy, I confess, my feeling is I find that very elitist. I mean, I don't find people where I live, that's not their concern.
No. And we had that conversation here in West Nova too, where worrying about the climate change and climate crisis really is, if you're talking Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's really quite a privileged position to be in. And that's not where most people are. Maslow's hierarchy is at the bottom level, people are looking for security. They're looking for a roof over their head, safety, having income, being able to support their family. And unfortunately, especially with COVID-19, we've got a much larger percent of our population are back into that area. So it's not that we don't have policies that will address their problems. We do. We have amazing social policies, but we have to get better as a party in communicating that to people in our online communication, in our communication from the party, from our door knocking communication as well. And often it is just changing the way that you present something. So like we have so many of these policies that we cluster under the climate crisis, because you can't have a just recovery without those social safety net being in place, it's a social foundation. Safety nets are far too leaky, and that's a problem with our existing systems. But it really is that financial foundation. And what I found that may help us being able to communicate is looking at the donut economic model, because the donut economic model has that floor, that social responsible floor that ensures everybody has their basic human needs, that have health care, have food, have a safe roof over their head, and medical care, and also education. So those are all green policies. You know, we have policies for all of those. And then on the outside of the ring, we want to make sure that we restrict growth so that we are not overshooting the Earth's capacity to be able to support that growth. And so we have policies there as well, with CO2 emissions, with pollution, you know, it goes on and on. So our policies actually fit really nicely into that model. And it's a very visual model that makes it easier to communicate that to people at the door. So I think we need to have a conversation with the author, Kate Radin, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, and see if we can have her permission to use that image when we are communicating this to people. You know, that model came out in 2012, and it is being used actively now in over 100 communities around the world with very good effect. And so it shows that it can be customizable to be large scale as well as small scale. So I love that. And it really mirrors the Green Party's focus on principles. Like, principles are like our milestones or our guideposts. You know, we make sure that our policy adheres to those principles. And the same thing with the donut economic model. These are principles. These are goals that we want to keep within. And our decisions and our political decisions and our legislation needs to be substantive, but it needs to fit within those guiding you know, signs or poles or you know, that guiding principles. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Of course, that's what I'm here for. So I think a question that's on a lot of people's minds, unless if you have something else to say. Okay, is that hearing from a lot of other candidates, they have this very, you know, exciting 100-day in office plan, so to speak. So I think a lot of us are interested to know, especially for the next federal election, what does that look like for you if you were to be the leader?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because to come up with something when you don't know what the reality is of being, and it is, you know, it's fun, but it's not necessarily going to be very accurate. You know, the first thing that we need to do is really start getting ramped up, get our EDAs the supports that they need and the connections with other EDAs so that they can start ramping up. Start looking for our candidates now. We should be doing that already. Don't wait till another couple of months for the election. Do that now, because we could be thrown into an election a lot sooner than we expect, especially now that they're proroguing Parliament and there's going to be a speech from the throne when they come back. That is one of the events that can result in bringing down the government. So it is really important that we prepare ourselves now, and unfortunately, internally, we're not there yet. We've been a lot on the plates of the federal council with the new federal council election. You know, we have a new EDA being hired, and there's some challenges around that now that's causing strife within the council. We have the leadership contest, so there really has been no prep for the next election. So that's got to be a top priority. And what I would do is I would bring in a working group of people, not just on federal council, but volunteers who have the experience from across Canada. We need lots of voices saying, how are we going to do this? And we need to take action now. We need a group that's going to be educating. I would love to get, it's a pet project that I have, which is to create mentorship within the party. And it could be somebody who has been on their executive of their EDA or in federal council and has that knowledge, historical knowledge within the party that would be in a mentorship position to help another EDA. So assigning people in a formal manner to have that connection. Because one of the things that really bothered me when I was talking to people after the last election is that over and over and over again, people felt that they ran that election on their own. I did as well. Like I was like pulling stuff out of the air, going on instinct because the resources weren't there. You know,
you're telling us. Oh yeah, we had that hard.
Exactly. And we all do our best, but wouldn't it have been a lot less stressful if we had some, roadmaps? We need to do this. What are the things we need to be aware of? Like avoid that one, don't turn left, make sure you stay on the road. So that we don't all make the same mistakes. I mean, we're going to make our own mistakes and learn from it, but let's not make the same ones over and over and over again. And so we really need to have supports for EDAs in place, because every time we have a misstep like that, we're taking a step back. We are wasting resources, and we're wasting people's enthusiasm. People who hit walls all the time are going to leave. We need to make it so that our volunteers succeed at what they're doing. And that's like the key to volunteering and managing your volunteers. Give them jobs that they can succeed at, and then give them a larger job they can succeed at. Grow our leadership from within, which is something we really suck at in this party. Like, sorry for my open, language, but we really do. That was one of the things that got me into the race from the beginning, because when people were thinking about who they wanted to be leader of the party, they were talking David Suzuki and Naomi Klein, all wonderful people. But do I see them leading our party? They're not Greens. They have chosen not to be political in that way. What about the people who've been working hard within the party? And we have good leaders. I mean, look, we've got 9 candidates in this race that, and I might be a little bit biased, but I haven't had anybody object to this comment, that each of us are better than the ones that are offered in the Conservative leadership race, right? So we have an abundance of riches here. We need to be using them and keeping them. We have to stop putting these roadblocks in front of people, and especially our youth. I hear over and over and over again how in the past we've had really excited youth come on to our Young Greens Council and come up with great ideas, and they want to get them implemented. They've got support behind them, and then bam, the response is, oh, we don't have the staff to do that. End of discussion. Like, how short-sighted is that? We've got 22,000 members. Surely we can find volunteers who would make that happen. We really are being short-sighted in not activating and really engaging our active members on the ground. And we could have more staff, mostly volunteers, than any other political party if we structure it right. I think that there's a big fear about the chaos of 22,000 people having an opinion on something. Well, yeah, if you got them all in one room, there would be. You don't do that. You structure it. You structure it into working groups. You structure it into support groups for the shadow cabinet members, where people have to have a certain accreditation or work experience to be able to get into that. If you have a technology working group, well, then you have to have people who have the technology background, so that it's not just everybody with an opinion, it's people with the skills, having an intelligent, informed opinion that are going to help. And then structure it so that you have a recommendation coming out of that group. So federal council is not inundated with everybody's opinion. They're presented with a well-formulated proposal on things that then they vote on, because that they are our governing body. And we need to respect that, but we need to make it easier for them. And you just do that by structuring it. And I've talked to so many people who are, have their MBAs, who've been doing, sorry.
All right, have some water. You good?
When you get that tickle in your throat and then your vocal cords don't work anymore, it's like, ah.
Yeah, we'll all just together.
Oh, sorry about that. So basically, this is a way, again, of making sure people succeed, of giving them the resources they need. And that may be that they need a collection of informed voices that can give them details in areas that they may not have depth in. Because even if you look at portfolios, each of them is quite broad. And I mean, right now we've got 3 MPs and they are bunching up on all of these portfolios. So it's really important that we have a functioning and effective shadow cabinet to support them in the research behind some of the issues that they are addressing. So we need to have more people informing those decisions, especially in areas I can see like international affairs. When something pops up out of the blue in a country, unless the shadow cabinet member has the depth of knowledge in that country, they're going to have a hard time coming up with a statement in a fast manner. But if they have a group of people that they can rely on, who one of them has that depth of knowledge, then that can really speed up that process as well, and be giving our shadow cabinet members the support they need. Because we do have to remember that our federal council members and our shadow cabinet are all volunteers. And so like we expect a whole lot from our volunteers. So we need to be giving them more support.
How do we, Judy, I think that's a splendid idea. But I mean, for me, the problem right now is lack of communication.
It is. Oh, totally. Yeah. Huge. Yes.
And how do individual Green members find out that if they have an expertise in something, then they could be part of a shadow cabinet group? I mean, for example, could the individual shadow cabinet members, just send out a broadcast to all members and say?
My understanding right now is that the onus is on the shadow cabinet members to find people within their peer group, even outside of the party, to be that support group for them. I think we need to be more centered in growing our leadership from within, because if we grow leaders from within, then we grow people potentially to take over that shadow cabinet position in the future. So one of the things I really want us to do, and it's called a skills inventory, which is something I've done with every volunteer group that I've ever done. We need to know what skills, training, education, and life experiences people have, so that, and if we get that into a database, it'll be very simple to be able to do a query. Here's my computer science hat on right now, but to do a query in order to pull up a group of people that would have the skills potentially to work on a certain task. And then we would be able to ask them, if you have a larger group, and you'll kind of ask the ones who have time and are ready to be able to work on that right now. It just would speed up the whole process. It would really allow people to be, involved more. And we could even have that as part of the, just thought of this now, when you log into the Green Party website and you have your profile, you could have a skills inventory right there. So just like you update your resume on Indeed, you could update your skills inventory with the Green Party your profile on the website. And so then you're not even having a staff member do that. You're having the membership do that themselves.
Yeah, I think there's a weird trust relationship with staff like how we have to submit our emails. I know for this event, we only were able to send out the email 2 days before the first one because there was a big holdup with staff. First, obviously getting the links from all the candidates, but then having to submit just for them to send it out. And so there's definitely a lot of mishaps there. And also, as you mentioned earlier, for staff is that we do not have a youth coordinator anymore. And we also don't even have an Ontario organizer. The person covering us is out on your coast and they don't know anything about Ontario, so that's definitely frustrating as well. So
if you're talking about Marlene Wells, she's not a member of the Green Party any longer. She was let go.
Oh my goodness, we don't even have one at all. I don't know who's covering us now though.
No, and I would encourage you to reach out to her because it's her story to tell. Another thing on the list of deeply concerning decisions that have been made this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that has been a problem all along. Another problem is that our regional reps have not been allowed to email their membership. When we tried to find out how many Green Party members are in the province of Nova Scotia, that information was not available to us.
Yeah, same here for the Young Greens Council. I wasn't allowed to email my Ontario Young Greens either.
Yeah, we weren't even allowed to know the numbers.
Yeah.
Which is deeply concerning, because how can a regional rep represent the people in their region if they're not allowed to communicate with them? You know, and I had talked to the previous regional rep for Nova Scotia and had a lovely conversation with her, and then asked her how I could keep in touch with what's going on. Did she have a mailing list I could sign up for? She says, oh, no, we're not allowed to do that. Most of, and this is a quote, most of what happens in federal council is in camera and I can't talk about it anyway, and anything else gets sent out by the party. Okay, so we have a problem with there being too much control by staff in terms of our communication, and we have to find ways that we can have our membership communicating with staff but not overwhelming them. Certainly don't want even hundreds of people communicating with staff. But in that structure I was talking about working groups coming back, one person representing the group with the recommendation of the group, going through federal council, it being approved, then that group could then be working with a staff member to implement that. So it is a way of getting the idea there approved and then shifting that workload over to help staff make sure that that's implemented. And it's a completely different paradigm than anything that we've done before. But these hurdles of our own making are holding us back from doing, and they're distracting us from doing the really important work that we need to do, which is getting Greens elected. And it's like this leadership race has been absolutely eye-opening. I could not have paid for the education that I've gotten during this campaign. Like seriously, could not have paid for this. But it's also opened my eyes to some serious challenges within the party itself that even as leaders going to inherit this, they're not necessarily going to be able to fix it. It's up to our federal council members to do so. So I really encourage you to reach out to your regional rep and federal council members and let them know how you feel on these positions, and give them your support when they are voting in the way you want them to vote, because there's a lot of not doing politics differently, or not doing politics differently, that's happening in our party right now. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes lobbying, which I'm very upset about, because if we have the process in place and we trust our federal council members to vote on something, I do not expect there to be a telephone campaign behind them to try to undermine them, and then to try to have a secondary vote, or having that vote turned out because certain people with a lot of power in the party didn't like the way it turned out. That is a really, really bad precedent to allow to stay, and that's what's happening right now in the party behind the scenes. Probably told you too much, but but it's very frustrating to see this types of things happen when there's amazing people in the EDAs who are ready to do the work, and this sort of nonsense behind the scenes is really slowing us down.
Yeah, I think pivoting more to, I mentioned about the first 100 days, I'd like to know more about your, I know leaders don't make policy, obviously, but I think they try to champion certain issues. Can you tell us a bit about the main issues that are on your radar?
The issues that are biggest for me are, of course, climate change, but a big part of that's going to be guaranteed livable income. Right now, with COVID-19, we have the biggest support for some form of universal basic income than I've ever seen before. And, you know, we may have an opportunity to get some form of it started. I encourage people to support all efforts. You know, there's an NDP motion that's been put forth that has been seconded by a Green Party MP, and it may not be perfect, it may not be exactly the way we would want it to be done, but it's written vague enough that once it has been accepted and then they start working on it, I think that having voice in that will be beneficial. It's you know, perfect is the enemy of getting things done. It really is. As a recovering perfectionist, I have learned that it is important to say, okay, this is good enough. This is going to get us where we want to, in the direction that we want to go. We will have to fine tune it anyway, because even if we think it's perfect going in, there's going to be things that are not, and it'll need to be adjusted. That's just the reality of life on this planet. It is really important that that we work together across party lines. And this is a really unique opportunity to do that as individuals, as Greens, and as our Green MPs in Parliament are doing right now. So really following their lead. It's so universal basic income. I love our guaranteed livable income, where it's all tied together. And I could talk about that for a full hour, so but I won't right now. The other things that we really need to be working on is, you know, proportional representation. We need to be working on at all times, but getting rid of the subsidies for oil and gas. You know, even the investors are leaving oil and gas. Why are we still subsidizing oil and gas? This makes no sense whatsoever. So we need to get those subsidies turned around and then be investing in green energy retrofit, green technology, making sure that when the clean energy technologies come out, that they're not being greenwashed, that they really are green, that we use full cost accounting. So what is going to be the impact on the environment? What is going to be the impact on local communities, which invariably tend to be First Nations or Black communities? We have to stop the environmental racism. We have to have that true cost accounting, because, you know, we think oil and gas is cheap because of what we pay at the pump. But when we factor in that we're paying subsidies through our taxes, that we are paying billions, literally billions of dollars to clean up oil and gas, abandoned oil and gas wells, this has been an ongoing problem for at least 30 years. And there's been no effort really put in place to ensure that money set aside for that cleanup. So it all falls back on the taxpayer. So those are costs. They may not be at the pump, but those are costs that we are paying for that industry. And we see the same with clear cutting here in Nova Scotia and across Canada, in that if we don't look at what's happening with the silt that's coming off clear cuts and into water, that's affecting spawning grounds of fish that the fisheries depends on, that we're not looking at habitat and ensuring that there are wildlife corridors so that migratory animals like the endangered mainland moose have to be able to go on their path, that we're not clear cutting in spring when we have migratory birds that are protected under the Migratory Bird Act, but they're very tiny little nests in trees. You cannot see them from the big machines that they use to clear cut our forests. You know, there are all these other costs involved in everything that we do, and when they play with the numbers to make it palatable for Canadians, they don't look at all of those. They call them extraneous. Well, I'm sorry, the planet's not extraneous. Human life on this planet is not extraneous. We need to start counting that in our costing. So that's a big one. And it's interesting because there's a little scuttlebutt going on right now about with the government proroguing that and I hope this is true, and it's the optimist in me, that they really are looking at revamping our social safety nets into perhaps something that's universal basic income, and that they're really looking at a green recovery out of COVID-19. It is the logical step. It is absolutely the logical step, and there is support for it across party lines, and in a way that we've never seen before. So I am really optimistic, cautiously so, but we will see what comes out of that. And we need to keep the pressure on. I'm becoming to have to put into my schedule about 30 minutes a day just for signing petitions. It's becoming on my regular schedule now, because there is some really, really good ones that are out there. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very in-depth, detailed answer. I really appreciate it. Fiona has her hand up for the next question, and I encourage Howard, Renata, David, if you'd like to throw another question in the chat. We are approaching our end of time, so make sure you get it in before the event. I know Howard looks at his phone. He can't believe it. Time flies when you're having fun.
This is really fun. First of all, I'd like to really say what a fantastically interesting period this is proving to be. I love these individual chats, but I also love it when a couple of you get together and talk and focus on a particular issue, and I'm sharing those with non-green friends.
Excellent.
I
do invite you. It is.
Dialogue. We are.
Yeah, it is.
I also wanted to ask you, I guess, how, right, I admit I had a little tiny thrill when I saw that, oh my God, Chrystia Freeland, of all people, is talking about we have to make our recovery green. And I thought to myself, this can't be the same Chrystia Freeland that, I watched like a hawk when she was trade minister, like flying through her damn teeth in Brussels just to get sympathy for Canada. She's a very intelligent lady, and I believe she can, change her spots. But is this yet another clever liberal posture?
Exactly, and that's where the cautiousness. Yeah, that's where the cautiousness comes from.
Confidence vote in October.
Yes.
Is this for real?
And that's where I say I'm cautiously optimistic, because fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And the election before last, especially when there was so much talk about first past the post, all the promises, and even this election where they turned their logo green, the Liberals did there. Do you remember that? Really were and here we're not seeing too much. So I'm cautiously optimistic. And Fiona, the first part of that question I've forgotten already, but I had something I wanted to add to that. What was that?
Oh, it's about the all these Zooms with a couple of you or three of you.
Oh, yes. I wanted to invite you. Thank you. So if I don't write it down, it doesn't exist in my world. It's tomorrow night on Thursday. David Murner and I are going to have a chat. It's I believe it's at, let me just double check, 8 Atlantic, so 7 Eastern, and it will be on this Zoom link, I believe. And oh no, it isn't. It's on David's Zoom link. But if you go to my my website or on my on my website, it'll give you the right link, or on my Facebook and on David's as well. So we've got events there. It is that opportunity to kind of have two of us talking about, and David and I have had a meeting of the minds on a great many things, and I really appreciate his integrity all the way through this competition. He has shown a level of integrity I haven't seen in the other. Not that anyone's doing anything wrong, but just he's consistent in his integrity, and I can really would be able to work with him quite well.
I should say I'm very glad you brought this up, because I have that in my calendar, and I've also sent it out by Facebook to quite a lot of people, but I had it down at starting at 8, by which I meant 8 Ontario time.
Yeah, no, it's 8. Let me just double check for sure, but
Seven,
it.
No.
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
7 for us.
Let's see here. Yeah, it is 8 o'clock Atlantic, so it's 7 Eastern.
Okay, I'll go change that then.
Yeah, yeah. I will double check that as well. But yes, yeah. So yeah, I love that we get an opportunity to be able to have those conversations and have people involved in them. Sometimes like having 9 candidates all at once. The town halls were wonderful, but you have like 30 seconds to answer something. You know how long-winded I am. It's really hard to come up with something in 30 seconds. So you just try to, basically you say yes to what they said and I'll add, right? Because ultimately we're all Greens, you know, we all have the same core principles. And no matter what our vision is, we will be the spokespeople for the party. And that means you know, furthering the policies that are developed by the members. And with policy development, I would absolutely love to see ongoing policy development workshops and the opportunity to be actively developing policy and refining policy all the time, all year round, and perhaps have multiple opportunities to be voting on policy. This waiting every 2 years, and then the trend has been that in order to have a guest speaker, we have less policy that we are going to be voting on. That, I think, is a mistake. I think we need to have the opportunity for people to put forth policy and have the members decide what policies they want to vote on. And with so much available in terms of software, we can easily do that online and get more people involved in policy making. You know, I think that's really important to be part of that process and to learn how we develop policy in the Green Party.
We have an easy question in the chat over here, and then Renata has her hand up. The question from David is, Judy, what is the topic of your chat tomorrow?
The topic of the chat tomorrow is really what our vision for Canada is and what our vision for the Green Party is. So we haven't had a conversation about this previously, so this is going to be a live, fresh, just chatting about the things that are important for us within the party and where we'd like to see the party go. And we did that on purpose because we didn't really want it to be rehearsed or you know, canned answers or anything like that. And I love that challenge. I love just having people throw questions at me. There's not one that I won't answer, and there's actually a private one in the chat I'd like to have an opportunity to address before we're done here.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give it to Renata, and then you can answer that last question.
Okay.
This one from Howard too.
Renata, yeah, there we go.
Is that, did I unmute or wait?
Yes,
yeah,
we can hear you.
Okay. I was interested in, well, in all of what you've been saying, but also about policy development. I've kind of found that really difficult over the last while I've been interested in the Greens to just participate in policy development. I've just never been able to really grab a hold of that process or get involved, even though I've made efforts. So yeah, that would be nice to see some changes going forward, and whether, you know, it's with you in charge or whoever ends up being in charge. It's kind of nice to see that happen.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it may even be that we have different steps into policy. So you're getting your toes wet, and then you're up to your knees, and then you're up to your shoulders when you can swim, kind of thing, in terms of policy development. So we don't scare people, new members, off with throwing them off the deep end in terms of policy, but allow them to start dipping in wherever they're feeling comfortable.
Great.
Perfect. And then the question, Howard typed it in the chat because there is a bird war going on behind him, is that proportional representation is one of the issues that brought him to the Green Party. What are your thoughts on how we can best work to achieve it? Good question, Howard.
It is an awesome question. And I think we need to be looking at what's been working with proportional representation. What's putting pressure on the government isn't just the little Green Party, you know, saying what they're saying. It's us working with everyone who wants to get this forward. So working with the UBI groups and with, I mean, there's so many, I think there's at least 5 independent groups that are talking about different forms of universal basic income. So we need to do the same sort of thing, and finding senators that agree with proportional representation and getting them to come forward, you know, having those 50 senators come forward in support of a basic income was a big turning point for basic income in my mind. So we need to be working with Fair Vote Canada and other groups that are actively working on proportional representation. We also have to be active in our EDAs and perhaps be doing town halls, talking to people and educating them on proportional representation. That was one of the topics that I found very difficult to fit into 5 minutes on someone's doorstep. You know, we weren't able to answer those questions. So a town hall is also a way to be reaching out to your community during time of COVID and trying to still be green and provide service within your communities. So that's important as well. But I'd like to see us having strategic cooperation. I won't say partnerships, but strategic cooperation with different nonprofits and other groups that are all pulling in the same direction, because we need to pull our voices together. And we are an activist party. You know, there's nothing to be ashamed of. We are a legitimate party, but we're an activist party, which means we have other skills and tools that we can bring to bear in order to affect the changes that we need to see in Parliament. So let's not be afraid to use those skills.
Thanks so much for answering that. And then
Sure.
I believe you have one direct messaged question, and
Yes.
then we can wrap up for the evening.
Yes, and thank you, David. He says, I'm sending the question just to me, or to you. If you feel uncomfortable addressing it, don't just ignore it. But I was told that you were initially rejected as a candidate. Is that true, and on what ground? Yes, and he has in brackets, you're obviously a stalwart Green. Okay, so in my opinion and experience, there's been some serious challenges with how this leadership contest was designed and implemented. In the election, when I was nominated and vetted in the last election, there were a couple of questions that came up, and I was just asked questions about it, and it was resolved, and it was not an issue. It was exactly the same issues that came up, but instead of a phone call to talk to me about them, they rejected the application and made me go through an appeal process and have to appear before them like a judge in tribunal to answer these questions, where a simple phone call would have resolved all of this. There was nothing new, there was nothing substantive, and there was no evidence of anything. There was a whole lot of accusations at a level that I really took offense to, and did defend on that basis. So it was very interesting. And now that the campaign has gone on further, it's just very interesting. I won't say any more than that. There's just, and I can't talk about specifics because of the legal requirements, but I will be submitting some recommendations on how to do a leadership contest better in future. And that's true for vetting for our candidates as well. You know, the lessons that we've learned from this are important for our candidate races as well. Thank you. And I did say there's not one question I won't answer. Right from the very beginning. I know that's putting myself out there, but.
Well, perfect. Thanks so much, Judy, for coming out. Fiona, did you have a final thought? I just saw you on mute.
I just finished a fascinating course with World Beyond War called War and the Environment. Why did I take it? Because I thought to myself, I'm a Green and I want to, and we have really a very detailed and I think excellent piece in Vision Green that addresses peace issues, foreign policy, and militarism. It does, from some of the, I think it needs to be updated, but I'd be very anxious just to hear from you as somebody who has served in the military, which I find is extremely interesting. Yeah. What do you think, what skills do you think that has equipped you with, really, and how, and what is your approach to green policy and these things?
So a lot of skills. One is, learning how to follow before one can lead. Seeing the best and the worst of a hierarchical organization. And, if you're out on a battlefield, you want, not that I've ever been, but if you're out on a battlefield, you certainly want, you don't want to stop and try to get consensus before a decision is made. You rather need somebody in charge to say, this is what we're doing. So for that kind of structure and that circumstance. But even the military has gotten better about allowing there to be consensus building in areas that aren't critical time and safety wise. And I think that that's to their credit. One of the things I loved in the military was that I was in during the height of the peacekeeping. And I think our identity as Canadians and Canadian military really is tied to that role of peacekeeping throughout the world. Most people I know are not happy with the way NATO has taken us, where we are now becoming aggressors in other countries, often on information that is found to be false, weapons of mass destruction. Anyone ring a bell there? And it's almost like we get duped into being aggressors in foreign countries, which I am vehemently opposed to. I think our role on an international stage needs to be as peacekeepers. It needs to be as humanitarian. If there's a conflict, we need to go in and make sure that people on the ground have fresh food, have water, clean water, and shelter, and their basic needs and are protected. It is really important that we also look at what we're asking of our military. We're asking of our military more and more to be responding to extreme weather events. When the writ dropped in September, we were day 6 with no electricity here in Nova Scotia, and still had another 2 days before we got electricity because of a hurricane that came through. So we had the Canadian military were here helping clear trees off of roads and power lines. That's not, there's no trade for that in the military. Like, there's no training that they get for that, but they're willing to step up and do that. And so it's critical that we provide them safety training for these types of things, that we supply them the equipment they need to be able to do that. I've also heard of, like, we were right close to Greenwood where my husband was posted. And we have heard from people doing search and rescue, which we worked on the civilian search and rescue here in Annapolis Royal, where they've actually had to hire civilian helicopters to do lifts, where they had to lift float planes out of the permafrost because they had sunk, because the permafrost was thawing in the north, and they've had to have that happen. And so our Canadian military don't have the equipment for that. Do I see a need for drones? No. Do I see a need for more fighter jets? No. We do need to be able to protect our borders, especially our northern border that is going to be ice-free within throughout the year, in the next, or through the summer anyway, in the next 5 years, because we already have other countries, including Russia and China, that are making moves on that land, saying it's theirs, when in fact it is in fact Canadian. So yeah, as much as we would love to be peace-loving and everything peace, when we live in a world that isn't, we still need to be able to protect ourselves, but we certainly don't want to be contributing to aggression anywhere in the world.
Perfect. That was a nice way to conclude, I think. It's always good to think about Russia invading good old Canada.
Yeah. Although I have to tell you this one story, and I can't remember exactly. I think it might be Greenland. There was one small island in our north, and our Canadians are up in alert, and they're sent out a couple of times a year to put the Canadian flag back up on this little island. And when they do, there's always a bottle of some booze there. And then when the other country, and I think it's Greenland, comes, and then they will put their flag up, and Canadians will have left something like a bottle of whiskey or something like that. It's hilarious. It's congenial, but still rivals on this little piece of land. If I talk about warring over a piece of land, that's about as warish as I want us to get.
Yeah, I've seen that post before. It's nice to see, and you can see the whole piece of land in one shot. There we go. Hands Island. Thanks, David. Always so knowledgeable.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much again, Judy. We really appreciate you taking the time to come out. Please check out Judy's website if you want to attend other events, such as her event, you said tomorrow evening with David Murner.
That's right. And I'm just going to put it here.
Excellent. Stay tuned. Our next event is a week today on Wednesday with Courtney Howard on the 26th.
Wonderful.
So please come out to that, everybody, and thanks, Judy.
Thank you so much for spending your evening with me. Awesome questions, and good luck, everybody, with the upcoming elections. Start looking for your candidates now.
Well, I mean, don't look too far. She's right here. Right. Talk to you guys later.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.